and welcome back to Bushka on Blitz. Great to have you with me here today for a look at another fantastic tank, the German Tier 9 Heavy, the E75. One of two German Tier 9 Heavies, but certainly a worthy of a video in its own right. A lot of people on the forums did ask for this tank, a couple of people in game, so here you go, I'm delivering. Now, why I like this tank is kind of irrelevant. I want to do more of a bare bones review for you and give you an opportunity to make your own decisions, but I will say this: when I'm having a struggle getting wins or just a rough trot, this is the tank that I will return to. It's very solid. I think I've got nearly 500 games in it. Where are we? E75, 481 games at 60%. So you can see there it does perform for me. German tanks at this tier are all about angling and side scraping, and the E75 is a absolute master at it. It has the right kind of gun too. In terms of pure DPM, the gun on this tank is nothing to write home about. It's just a shade over 1900, I think about 1950, something along those lines. But any tank that side scrapes or wants to play that peek-a-boom style like the IS, the E100, the Mouse, the E75, you want high alpha. It guarantees that. It has an average damage of 460, but you will pop people for 500 quite often, and at tier 9 that's a huge chunk of health. A very low rate of fire, hence I do make sure I run rammer. Your penetration values on the tank are just fine. You'll pen 246 average in terms of armour piercing, and your APCR will go up to 311, which means that you can duke it out with tier 10s pretty comfortably, pen their weak spots, and really, put up a good strong fight at whatever tier you see. It's not outmatched at all in tier 10 games. Your aim times are 2.9. Some people do run a gun laying drive on this tank. I just don't have room for that. For me, there's a couple of more important pieces of equipment I carry. Your dispersion of 0.38, certainly nothing to write home about, but if you're patient with tanks like this, you'll find that you can actually let the reticle get to its smallest part and lead a tank a bit, and you can still hit, but it's not something you'd recommend. You can see there, the M103's got lovely gun handling, 0.37 at 2.3 seconds, so it's a touch better in 5.36 rounds per minute. And the IS8, typical bloody rusky, there you go, 0.38 again, 2.9 aiming time. It does kill you on rounds per minute, 5.16, and it has slightly higher DPM as a result. But back to the E75. It's not really a tank where you compare it to its compatriots or its peers and say it's better or worse with like a medium, where your DPM is really important and it's all about the penetration, all those kind of things. All those things factor into this tank, but for the main part, the play style of this tank is what makes it king of the playground for me. I think the T54 may be a better tank in terms of pure best tank for tier, but I think the E75 makes a very good argument for it, and it's certainly a tank that I'm most successful at. Now, I run this tank obviously in consumables. I use adrenaline with it because when you do need to pump out DPM, it's nice to have that little bit of backbone. I use a big med pack, big pack, multi-purpose restoration pack, and I use a repair kit. That is because you'll quite often angle, wiggle, try and take shots on your tracks in this tank, and as such you want to make sure that you repair as quickly as possible. Hence I carry a toolbox as well as vents and my gun rammer. Vents, goes without saying, they help a little bit with everything, from your view range to your crew skills, your reload time. Toolbox, because I already have 20% perk from getting repairs to tier 5, which by the way was the first thing I did with my heavy perks, was go for repairs to 20%. Close combat, robustness, all these other ones are great, but repairing your tracks on this tank can be the difference between getting stuck in a bad position when you're trying to side scrape and taking big damage and getting back to your side scrape and comfortably bouncing shots. So with a toolbox and repair perks, you're looking at about 45% reduction in repair times on your tracks. So, good alpha on your gun. couple of weak spots, but we're going to have a look at the Armour in a tick. That's what I carry. Something that's peculiar to this tank was it did get buffed just before patch 1.5. It used to be a terrible, terrible grind, mainly because the engine was so horrific you couldn't move fast enough to do anything of note, and the turrets cost you an absolute packet in terms of XP. It was much like grinding a T95 with a turret at the start. It moved so slowly. The buffs helped it tremendously, and it was more of a lifestyle buff than anything else. It just got you up to the top a little bit quicker. As such, I think the next thing to look at would be the Armour. Here we have the E75. Now what we'll do is we will have a look at the American Tier 9 M103 as our gun. There we go. Now that's the actual Tier 10 gun on the M103. If it doesn't have a Tier 10 gun, a lot of the tanks that you find, if they've got stock guns, they're going to struggle tremendously. You can see the M103's got a lovely gun for a Tier 9 heavy. And even then, you can see if you angle this tank, if you put your gun along like this, point it at your enemy along that line, it becomes a very, very tough tank to pen. Even that lower glacis with a Tier 9 AP round, Tier 10 gun AP round from an M103 is only a 34% chance of pen. And we'll have a look here at the actual collision model. That's 130 millimeters of armour on that lower glacis and 160 millimeters of armour on the top. So you would think for the most part that's an easy pen for most tanks. But if you look at the armour penetration model of this tank, the angle of that armour is such that the effective armour of the top from a frontal view, it's a lovely tank, isn't it? The effective armour is 326 millimeters of penetration required. 206 on that lower glacis. So if you can angle it slightly, your effective armour up top goes to 344 and your effective armour below 273 millimeters, or even if you go over the top to 302. Now what that means is you want to side scrape with this tank. You want to basically be looking at the line of the gun being the wall of the target, being behind the wall, and the actual tank itself only showing those tracks on the side. And you can see that's a ricochet there. That's going to take hits on the track. You'll chew through a lot of ammo. Even that front drive wheel is not an easy hit. You've got to go straight through. Very, very, very flat surface around the gun, which is a peculiar trait of all the Tier 8, 9 and 10 German tanks, the E100, the Tiger II, the E75. But even then, that's a 253 millimeter target. If you just angle that turret ever so slightly to the right when you're side scraping, you can see it becomes a very, very tough pen. You want to be careful not to get your cheeks out in the open at all, because from the side this tank is a big, big target and you will get penned anywhere. Particularly by tanks who have HE. If a tank's behind you with HE and they want to pump one through your doors, they can really take your rocks off. I quite often in a T95 or a T110 E3 will hit tanks like this for 1,000 or 1,100 damage from the rear by hitting their weak spots. It's just one of those things. You don't ever turn your back on a Tier 9 or 10 tank destroyer in this tank, or give them your sides, because you will get absolutely brutalized, and with good reason too. You have some of the best armour in the game at the front, certainly in your tier. This, you've got to remember, this is with the AP, standard AP round from a Tier 10 gun from a comparable heavy. It's not a crap gun either. Obviously with high explosive anti-tank, that brings it all back. If they want to spend gold, they can, but even then, if you are side scraping successfully, then there isn't a huge amount of target. But there you go. Your gun depression on this tank, only -8, which is still lovely. That's more than enough for you to go hull down if necessary. But it's all about angling this tank. You'll note when I'm driving it in the videos that I move it from side to side at times, and I very, very rarely will go frontally to any target at all. You'll see that I'm always looking for my next target, where it might be, and I'm driving at a slight angle like some kind of drunk crab approaching a target. But I tell you what, it makes bounces, they come from everywhere. You'll be really surprised at what you can bounce in this tank. The slope on that upper glacis is absolutely fantastic. There you go. So that's the E75. Hell of a tank, and at distance, good luck penning that with AP. If it's got any kind of angle on it, you're not going to see much at all. So there you go. It's got great alpha on the gun. The arm is fantastic. It's got tracks that can eat shots like no tomorrow. And yeah, it's a really fun all-round tank. Now we're going to have a look at 3 games here. All of them have particular nuances to them, and I'll point that out as we're going through. But the E75, Tier 9 German Heavy, let's go and have a squiz. Now here we are on Black Gold. 2 of the actual gameplay videos that we're going to look at were on Black Gold. We're getting out on the left flank. Happily we're the top tier tank here in this game. Now you'll note whenever I'm coming around a corner here and I know that there's an enemy ahead or there's a possibility of seeing someone, I'm always trying to get my tank angled correctly. Now you always want to have maybe a 30-degree angle as you're approaching the enemy. I know that the tank on my left here behind that rock area is a KV3. He's only a lower tier tank. I'm not particularly worried about him derping a shot there, donking it, because basically this tank is not much of a sniper. Now we should always be bouncing a KV3, it just goes without saying, but because of the poor armour on the side of this tank, you'll see there's a tank there ahead of me. I'm trying to keep both these tanks on an angle, and I'm going to use that rock there. Always try and put yourself between, bouncing another one, put a rock or a building between you and anyone who can shoot you from the flanks, and you can see I'm constantly more worried about staying away from that T25 tank destroyer that's behind me and backing up into the rock there. So I'm going to get him, turn around, and still have not given that T25 AT a shot at the side of my tank. And he's taken fire sitting out there waiting for it, and he's going to be an easy kill. Now it's very important to note in this tank that I will occasionally snipe, but I wait until the reticle's absolutely at its smallest part. I lead the tank by a long way, and I don't waste time just sitting there sniping. A lot of guys get frustrated with E75s and other heavies that will snipe on maps, and I can't say that I blame them. They're not very effective at it. Their best point of call for the most part is going and getting into the thicker things. So here we are, we're down 3 tanks. Just like to dedicate this to Weaverly, the Ferdinand who did about 1300 damage and proceeded to call me a noob, E75. This carries for you, Weaverly. So I'm getting in the circle because I do like to pressure. We've only got a Tier 7, a Tier 8 and myself left, and they've got 5 tanks. Now the Tiger 2 here with me does do a very good job. Full hats off to him. We wouldn't have won it without him. There's the object. Now I donked this shot, but fair enough. He was getting away from me. This is where I get called a noob by this Ferdinand driver. Caught one on the side from my troubles. I'm more worried about getting to that rock there so that I can side scrape off it if I need to. You can see here, side scraping back, the object doesn't have a shot. We bounce a shot from him. That's where this tank is really valuable. If you can get to an object, and also don't waste shots in this tank. It's a long reload. That there would have been a very bad shot to take. I would have missed it. He would have had the reload on me. We take our time, we wait, and we get that IS-8. Patience in this tank is an absolute virtue. You've got a very, very slow reload on your gun. If you waste your shots, you will quite often find that you're in a situation where the enemy can simply drive up next to you and put one in your unprotected flank. Your big gun is your big deterrent, so don't waste it. Now we get very lucky here in a second, not with these 2 guys. That guy, Wallet Warrior there, deciding that he knew what to do. the Tiger 2 is good bait. He's nearly a one-shot and they come out for him and we get it. But we know we see something pop on the screen and we take a hard right turn to try and avoid and bounce the shot off the rear. Hell of an angle for that IS3 that's coming around. He's at full health. The most important thing you'll note here is the angle. Again, the angle with this tank. We are not going to give him a clean angle the whole time. Always at that slight rotation, making sure that wherever his gun is pointing, he is going to have to go through a big angle on my E75. Now he's got the hit points on me, and he does a smart thing in a sec. He switches to HE, but we want to face hug him. We're going to get our front glacis in as close to him as possible, and that means that he's not going to be able to shoot our lower glacis, and the angle on our front glacis is such that even when he goes up the wall here, he can't pen it. He's using HE to try and get through that, and it's really important. You can do this with a lot of tanks, especially tier 8s. T95 you can do this with as well, surprisingly, because it moves so slowly, its front glacis, it can't also depress its gun far enough to hit your front glacis if you face hug it on flat ground. And I'm going to switch to HE here because it's really important to finish this guy off, and a HE shell will guarantee the win, and we do so. Really tough break there for Kaizo in that IS3. Did all the right things. He just got that acute right turn from me that gave him a terrible angle, and he was using HE, but there you go. Rossini's, Stillwell, Top Gun, just over 4k damage. And a lot of the games I had in this tank while trying to get a video for the review were exactly like that. You can see all these games around 4 to 5k damage. I couldn't find a really good example of side scraping. Here we have a louver, and you'd think that's a nice easy kill. He gets one into me there, but I'm thinking that's just luck. He's actually a pretty good driver, this guy. I don't know what his profile's like. Joel, I think his name is, but you can see, just going to take one into his turret at the top. I don't want to waste APCR on a louver. There's a scent behind him, he gets one into me as well. I'm a bit concerned here that these guys are penning me. I thought I had good angles. This guy's actually hitting me in the upper glacis, not upper glacis, in the gun mantlet and the hatch, which is a tough shot. So we juke him out. Quite often, if you pretend to leave a side scrape position, the enemy will rush forward in an attempt to get your flank, and you can then smash one into him. That Centurion copped a flogging for it. The louver again, the little bugger. Here we go. We're more worried about putting one into him than we are into the scent. The scent's going to take off and try and flank me. Easier to draw back here and give him a tougher angle. You can see we're bouncing there. The scent's going to come around on my left and put one into me. That can't be helped, but I've got to get rid of this guy first and foremost. So here we go. Backing up, keeping the Centurion right in front of me, bouncing one off the front glacis. Face hugging now. We don't want to angle when we're face hugging. We bounce another. And there we go. Always important to make sure that you face hug nose to nose. Get as close as you can to the other tank. And that upper glacis at such a severe angle really makes it tough. Now, I'll fast forward through this, but it's important here that you see why you shouldn't camp as a heavy tank on any map, really. But particularly when you have a Tiger 2, an IS8, an E75, all stuck down in that corner, and suddenly you've got these huge, big side-on targets. Just look at this E75. I mean, how could you miss that kind of a target? Again and again, all day long. So this is where really cheap points. The louver driver was actually pretty good, and that Centurion wasn't bad. And these guys, for all I know, could be fantastic drivers, but they've just put themselves in poor positions, whereas I was lucky enough to actually use my tank as is its wont, frontally, and we got the benefit of it. Then we're going to come out here, we're going to pump one into the Tiger 2, and it really is an interesting little example. The IS8 has a crack at me, so I then just put it straight next to the building, and you'll see he'll hit me again, and he'll just take out the tracks. And that's one of the reasons that you carry two repair kits on this tank. It's really, really important that you can always repair those tracks. Very standard game, but I mean, for all that, there's a steel wall, a sniper badge, and over 5,000 damage. Great tank. You know, I can't say enough about it. Now here we are on Black Gold again. Interesting map, as always, but an interesting game this. Basically, I'm trying to side-scrape off this big concrete silo, but no one decides to come my way. I don't have much time for sniping here. I'm not really interested in it. It's not much of a pastime for me as a heavy. I'm still waiting to see where the numbers come up. And then we get a couple of mediums coming here. Maybe I can make better use of my time helping out. So I do so. I start pumping it into this T20, making them move, making them think. Now it's good to note here, those guys up the top are going to get wiped, and the rest of my team sits here and snipes. Much like we just mentioned on Dead Rail, you don't want to be the heavy that is just sitting there sniping. In some cases, it's unavoidable. But we're going to do a little bit of wet work here in this tank. We're going to go and get nice and bloody, and we're going to push the pace of the game, because if we don't, we give the opposition the opportunity to basically dictate terms and have map control while we're all stuffed down in a little corner, flanked and destroyed. So I'm going to push forward here, and you'll see I change priorities on my target halfway through. What I do know is that there's tanks behind me, and I'm now spotting proximity-wise by being close enough to these three tanks here and giving them all shots at the tanks that come down to hit me. Now this guy's going to switch to HE, fair enough. There's a T-54 behind me. This tank's good enough to rotate and traverse quick enough to put some damage in. You can see we get him in front of us. And then we're going to use the hill. We're going to decelerate down it, which turns us quicker than he can turn decelerating up it. There we go, we get him, and then turn around to polish off the SU. Now you can see that that really changed the complexion of the game. The T20's now dead. We proximity spotted him just by going and lighting him up, and we gave the rest of our team some targets. We also didn't let them dictate terms by sitting up here and sniping those guys in that pocket. Now we're just always trying to hold that angle. This guy's hitting us with HE, but he can't get a flat surface to really do full damage on. I don't know how that missed, but that's what you get with a tank with 0.38 dispersion. We bounce another. You can see me wiggling my tracks there, just not really giving him a happy days flat surface to hit. Now, real question time here. We don't know where the hell we're going. We do know that that ISU 152 just sniped a guy off on the flank, so we're pretty sure he's in respawn still. But there's a T-32 and a T-34 unaccounted for. I don't want to go down there and give anyone my flank. I basically want to be in a position where if I can be helped by my teammates, I will be helped. So the T-32s come roaring down here. I think I've got the kill shot. Whatever, it goes underneath him and bends like a banana. I'm wiggling, and we take it on the track. There you go. Real strength of this tank. Now, don't waste a second shot. I don't rush it. I don't hurry. Just find it and then let it go. So the T-34 has been causing all kinds of troubles. That's ID, something. I'm not sure. Here he goes. He's trying to get to cover, and he very nearly gets there. But we get one in the back of his turret. Now, one of the most basic rules of Blitz is that you do not just trade hit points for no reason. You don't want to just sit there taking shots backwards and forwards. So I angle, but I know how many hit points he has left, know how many hit points I have left. An average roll will kill him. So I switch to APCR and basically say, you can have a shot at me and I'll have a shot at you, and see who comes out the better. So there we go. One tank left versus three. A foregone conclusion, you'd think. But the tank is one of those bloody Russian derpers, which means that the all he has to do is basically touch you with that howitzer and I'll evaporate. I'm a one shot. Likewise the T-29 next to me, the ISU. So we're going to get in the circle, put on pressure via cap, make him move, which is always the wise thing to do. And then rather than just angle and take shots like I would if it was a T-29 or a T-32 or even an IS against me here, I am going to more or less try and evade any kind of shot. And we can do that because the cap is pressuring him and forcing him to actually come to us. Yeah, so what we're going to do here too is actually just evade his incoming fire because, yeah, again, if he touches us with that derp cannon, he's very likely to kill us. So we're going to dodge, weave, duck, whatever's necessary. So hopefully that was a good bit of a review for you. Gave you some idea on the gameplay required for this tank to be successful and why you should be grinding it. All these German tanks, you really need to angle. Please, if you can take anything away from this review, it's that you need to angle the tank. So there you have it, the E75. Another fine game to finish on. The steel wall there, 5 kills. Good solid game, good solid tank. Great fun tank to drive. Thanks again for coming to Bushka on Blitz, and please subscribe to the channel up in the top right corner. Look forward to seeing you when we review our next tank. If you have any suggestions, thoughts, feedback at all, leave it in the comments or shoot me an email. I'll be on the forums as well. Have a great day. Cheerio.